Hi guys, Graham from Penguin Motors here. This is part 2 in our RS2000 race engine rebuild. In this video I show you a few bits along the way to rebuild it. I'm sorry some of the details missing, but I just got snowed under, so unfortunately the videos kind of came second. But you know, the engine's out there, it's done, we've got it on the dyno, we've got a graph at the end, and it made some good numbers for what it is. So sit back and enjoy it, and I'll catch you on the flip side. Right guys, so here we are. I've taken the carbs off the manifold and we can see there's an enormous step between the mishab and the manifold. So clearly this is a 40mm manifold, not a 45, and it needs opening out. Now what I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to open it out to take a mishab for 48s. That way the customer's got the choice of these 45s or his bigger 48s. Right, intake manifold, I'm officially giving up with it. I've stuck it in the bridge belt, angled the table, gone down the top with a cutter to open it out to suit the bigger carbs, and then spent what felt like an eternity trying to blend it all in and make it work. But in reality, it's a non-starter. It gets very thin just below the flange there, and I've actually broken through here trying to get a nice shape out of it. I could weld that up and we could carry on, but ultimately the manifold is a bit too short, it's a bit too angular, and it just doesn't have metal where it really needs it to have it to make a nice shape. So, you know, on this occasion, best off, give up, start again with a better manifold, more appropriate, more power. Right, here we are, cylinder head. That's rubber grease in there. Now, when I first looked at this earlier, I commented it looked like it'd been ported with a knife and fork. To be honest, it still does. But what it looks like isn't really relevant. It's how it works airflow wise. I'm not trying to sell heads, I'm just trying to improve this one a bit and make some power. So all new valves, and in case of the intake, I've increased the size, and that has enabled me to rework the short turn. And we've got a healthy airflow increase over previous. Right, so here we go, one airflow chart. Now in blue we've got the pre-modified, and at the end of the last video I said it flowed 105 CFM. It didn't, it only actually made 103. And if you look at the green line was the limit to where the valves lifted to. So in practice the head only actually saw 100 or just over 100 CFM. And a standard head flows around 85 CFM. So you can see it's up on standard, but not hugely. After our mods, and I didn't touch the exhaust side at all, but as I said in the earlier clip, I did rework the short turn and the inlet. And yeah, we peaked at 116 CFM. So provided we can get the cam somewhere near its proper full lift of around 500 thou, we will pick up a huge bunch of airflow and potentially a good chunk of power. So here we are, head on, piston TDC, valves in the head. I've actually marked I've put some engineer's blue on the piston, so if I rotate the valve, we will mark the pistons to exactly where it touches it. But also, I want to measure and see how much clearance we've got to give me an idea how deep a cutout I need to put in the pistons. So normally I like to go quite big. I like to leave plenty of valve to piston clearance. It's safer in an over rev, it's safe in a wrong slot. And I do believe it helps power a little because the piston actually shrouds the valve somewhat. So if there's a bit more clearance around the valve when they're close together, I think that helps airflow. In this engine, we're struggling for compression. Because we're limited on piston size, we can only go to 92mm. We're not going to get 12:1 compression without skimming the head to death. I've already talked to the customer about that. He doesn't want to skim the head to death. So yes, it has been skimmed, but that's where we're at. So currently, depending on head gasket choice, we're around 11.5 to 1. So we're going to stop there. Right guys, so what do we have here? Well, we have the bottom end, same block as before. Boards have had a quick hone. Face has been refaced, give it a better, smoother, nicer finish. We've brought the pistons proper flush at TDC. I've also put some valve cutouts in the pistons. The old ones had something of a cutout in there from some of a little dig of a grinder. I've actually put some proper cutouts in. They're not all that deep. I don't think we need them, but I like to err on the cautious side with them, simply because it allows you more room in case of a missed gear, your wrong slot, or even something get wild and swing the cam timing around with a dyno without giving a cuss about valve to piston clearance. So yeah, so that's that. I'm gonna flip the engine the other way up now. Right, and in the bottom end, I've already glued down the suck gasket because I like to bolt it in place and glue it down. By sticking it to the block, it's less likely to spread and split out. Yeah, new crank ground. We've got a new set of steel rods, and lastly, in the bottom end, we've got a brand new old stock genuine Ford oil pump, completely stock. Device, but that's all it needs. This pump will give, on 2050 oil, will give 70 psi on hot oil, 68, 70 psi. That is plenty enough. And I think probably the high capacity pump that was originally fitted was probably responsible for it running the big end, because that just pumps so much oil to the top of the engine. So our sump's had a clean and is ready to go on. Lastly, we parted out the original Ford aluminium sump baffle for an item from Burton's with a swinging gate on it. This should better control the oil, because not only has it got its swinging gate, it's deeper in that direction. So this should help a bit with oil control. Right guys, in the last video I said this cylinder head was short on valve lift, and one of the things I said I was going to do about it was try to change some valves, use some shorter valves. Now there's two questions here. Why was it short on lift, and what does my valve change going to do to help it? Well, it can be short of valve lift. Principally, the usual reason is either the valves are completely the wrong length for the base circle of the cam, or it could be the seats have been cut really deep in the chamber, shoving the valve through a long way, which effectively makes it longer. Or it may be the combustion chamber, like they used to do in the auto sprint heads. They used to reprofile the combustion chamber and deepen it again, shoves the valve through. And as the valve rocks on the rocker, up and down, if you change the valve length, say make it shorter, your tappet clearance goes up, so you have to wind the rocker post up. And what happens is, the higher the post, the further this way the cam wipes, the lower the post, the further it that way it wipes. So it's simple mechanical leverage. The further this way the cam is, i.e. the shorter the valve, the taller the post, the more valve lift you will get. But the effect isn't dramatic. It's roughly 3 to 1. So my 1mm shorter valves are in thousandths of inch, roughly 41 thou longer. So that's going to gain us, I don't know, say 13 thou lift. So not a huge amount, but improvement nonetheless. So I had a measure up, still not entirely happy with the lift I've got. So I did a cam swap, took out the HT1 in there, and in its place I put a near identical Newman P5. So what's the point there? Well, the difference is that the Kent and the Newman cam have different size base circles. And the base circle of the Newman cam, base circle there, back of lobe, is smaller, therefore pushes the post up more, gets you a bit more lift. Now, unfortunately, I lost the video footage of that part, and I don't remember the exact figure, but we ended up with, I think, 485 thou valve lift going on 490. So we were in the sweet spot. Pinto really needs something over 480 thou to make decent power, and we got in the sweet spot. So there we go. That's valve lift. Right, back again. I forgot something. I also increased the size of the inlet valve, and by increasing the inlet size of the valve, I was able to move the seat this way because it's bigger. Therefore, again, effectively shortening the valve more. So yeah, it was a triple whammy to get the seat. We had to bigger valve, shorter valve, and a smaller base circle cam. So not easy to get the valve lift you need if the tolerances are all stacking up the wrong way. Right guys, so where we got to now, and why have we stood next to a picture of a flywheel? Well, yeah, this is the flywheel in the engine, a nice light one as you can see. Partly we stood next to it because I seem to have lost some footage. But yeah, I mean at this point I bolted the head on using a Cometic head gasket, 36 thou thick. Now, there is discussion on these, and the gasket manufacturer tells you to fit them dry. And I have done, but I find they tend to weep coolant along the edges of the block. So I either coat the block and the head around the waterways, or sometimes even the whole gasket with a lav well seal. And the thing with the well seal is that will seal any very minor imperfections. Like say, round the edges, round the walkways, but if you get it over where the fire ring goes, it doesn't matter, it will still seal perfectly well. So that's that. Yeah, pretty straightforward, just bolt the head down. I've used ARP studs, usual 80-pound foot. So why the picture of the timing disc? Well, simply it was easier to stick the timing disc on the back of the engine. So, you know, it can be a faff to put them on the front pulley. Sometimes I do, but in reality, you've got a bit of hot melt glue or some double-sided tape or something. It's just as easy to glue it to the back. In actual fact, it's quite easy then to turn the whole flywheel by hand, looking at your pointer or whatever. So yeah, tech tip there for you. Stick your timing disc to the flywheel. It doesn't work if you're in the car, but you know, you can't have everything. Right, next up, here's a quick snapshot of the exhaust manifold, a Tony Law. I think that was a smaller bore 4.2 run they do. I've never run one before, but if you hang on a bit longer, you'll see it seemed to work quite well.
Right, so what you've just seen is a couple of dyno runs with our 45s on there and our 36mm chokes. Cam timing as I dialed it in. And it's looking pretty good. We've 28 degrees of timing timed into our Bestech distributor. We're at high 180s. We're getting close to 190 horsepower. So this is looking pretty promising. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to swing the cam timing a couple of bits and then tickle the ignition timing. Right, well, after many power runs, we've settled on a jet setting and a timing setting. So peak advance on our Bestech distributor was somewhere between 32 and 33 degrees. To be honest, I can't remember which. It certainly didn't want any more, and it definitely wanted at least 32. This last run is done with our 36mm choke still in our 45mm carbs. So the airspeed's going to be pretty high. So we're running fairly small 145 mains to make the power, which figures because we've got 145 mains at 170 airs and F16 tubes. So, you ready, boys? Should we make some noise? Let's see the last power run. So, right guys, here we are. Done and dusted, all finished. And we got some pretty decent numbers. Now, my original plan was to run this engine up on the 45s with the 36 chokes as installed. Sort it out, set it up, then try it with some bigger 38s. And then bolt my 48 Webbers on, just to see what happened. But it made really good power on the 36mm chokes. And I had a chat with the client and we decided to leave it be. Now why is this? Well, the engine originally only made about 170 odd horsepower down at Track and Race Raynham. And I know that's not ideal comparing rolling roads to my engine dyno, but the only other engine that's run on both of them was within 1 or 2 horsepower of the number I got to what they got. So there's a good comparison there. And I know it would have been down on power because it was sorely lacking in valve lift. It had nowhere near enough compression. The inlet manifold didn't fit, or didn't fit the carbs. So yeah, we've picked up 20 something horsepower. And as my client said, the problem with the engine before was he couldn't get out of corners and they were driving away from him down the straight. So I think we've probably got a good compromise. Almost certainly I could find more power, but I think we would hurt the drivability low down. So perhaps for the moment we run it as it is now, and then, you know, if in time we want to shoot for some more power, well, we can have it back and change the head or put more cam in it or whatever. Anyway, so yeah, now if you switched on, I'm leaning us at the end of the session on this Tony Law manifold. Never run a Tony Law before, but this is a Tony Law 421, and I think that's somewhat responsible for the really good numbers given the small carb size. But if you switched on, you'll notice that in the dyno footage, the engine's running on these pulleys with a, that way around, with a fairly loose belt loop between them because I run them tensionless. I now hit sitting here with anodized aluminium pulleys on it. And the reason is that with the pulley size difference, the TDC reference isn't great because there's quite a big gap. So I ran it on these first. And when I was happy with ignition timing and jetting and stuff, I then ran it up again on the smaller crank pulley. In theory, it would have seen a power gain. It didn't. We lost 1.5 horsepower. And why is this? Well, potentially I ran this setup tensionless, whereas this, I tensioned the belt properly, and this bearing, I don't know if you can hear it, it's rough as hell. So, you know, I'm not surprised we've gone from an untensioned belt to a properly tensioned belt and an alternator. But if that's 1.5, 2 horsepower there, then that's no big deal. It still made damn good power for what it is. So what's up next? Well, get it off the dyno, give it back to the owner, and see how it fares on the racetrack. On that bombshell, you know what to do, guys. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, and I'll catch you on the flip side.